Quick thing before we start. We are technically the technology this show is about.
Yeah, that is a bit of a situation.
So Dastan did the research, wrote everything, made every call. But then, well, he outsourced the voices.
Which is honestly on brand.
Machine voices, human mind.
Welcome to Plain Strata, where we take decentralized AI apart one layer at a time.
Right.
This is a pulse, and today we are talking about what happens when the thing standing between people and the best open AI models stops being hardware and becomes a license.
Yeah. And to really see this, we need to drop into the concrete scene that makes all of it matter. So on August 12, a lab in Hangzhou published a massive 2.4 trillion parameter model online.
Right. And then literally 2 days later, they published a small one.
Exactly.
Both of them are sitting on the exact same site, right behind the exact same download button.
But the rules are completely different. The small one is free to sell forever. The large one, well, it is free only until your business passes $50 million a year in revenue, and then you have to come and negotiate.
Wait, so if you are listening to this and you run a startup, the rules just fundamentally change the moment you cross that specific revenue line.
That was the why. The how is the rest of the show, and no background is needed. If you can follow a story, you can follow this.
Okay, let's lay out the spine of this right now. A license is a promise between two named parties. And the constraint on serving the best open AI models has moved from the memory required to hold them to a revenue line in a legal document.
Right. And a permissionless network cannot cross this constraint because it has nobody who can sign a contract.
Yeah, we will keep coming back to that exact constraint. So we understand the two rules now. But to understand why they actually matter, we have to look at what is, literally inside those two files.
Let's start with the physical reality of the files themselves. You have to remember that weights are really just numbers.
Right, just billions of them sitting on a hard drive somewhere. And each individual number just tells you how strongly one small piece of the network pulls on another piece.
Training a model is just the long, incredibly expensive process of finding good values for all of those numbers. And once you find them, well, those numbers are the model itself.
So if you can physically copy the numbers, you have copied the intelligence. That is why the phrase open weights actually means something to you and me.
Let's look closely at the small file they released. The 27.78 billion parameter model is completely whole.
Wait, it has everything?
It has everything. Text, images, video coming in. It even has a massive 262,000 token context window.
Huh. Yeah.
They even published an official quantized build right next to it, which, compresses those numbers so you can run it on smaller hardware. But now look at the massive 2.4 trillion parameter model.
Right. It is a much bigger object, obviously,
yeah.
But it actually has massive pieces missing.
Right. The published checkpoint for the large model is text only. It is entirely missing the vision capabilities.
Wait, really? It is also completely missing the million token context window that they actively advertise in their paid hosted service.
Exactly. When you set those two realities side by side, you realize something very important. The open weights philosophy is not a company position here.
Yeah. I mean, it is just a control surface. They are applying this philosophy exactly at the size where the money is and literally nowhere else.
Let me name a cross-domain pattern for you. It is called permission without capacity.
Permission without capacity. Okay. I'm not sure yet. Let me think about what that looks like in the real world.
Well, think back to the journalist A.J. Liebling in 1960. He famously pointed out that freedom of the press is guaranteed only to those who own one.
Oh, right. So you legally have the right to print whatever you want, but you don't actually have the massive iron printing press to do it.
Exactly. 2 weeks ago, a massive model was completely free to download, but almost nobody listening to this could actually run it.
Because you needed hundreds of thousands of dollars in fast memory just to turn the thing on. You have to hold all those numbers in active memory at once.
That is permission without capacity. You are allowed to run it, but you physically cannot. The decentralized network solved this historical problem.
Yeah. They solved it by pooling their resources. They basically bought the printing press together, by linking up gaming cards all across the globe.
But now we are looking at the exact mirror image of that pattern.
Wait, let me guess. Capacity without permission.
Right. Capacity without permission. The network already bought the press cooperatively.
The machines are literally sitting on the floor right now. The network has all the computing power it needs.
The model is sitting on the disk, completely ready to run. But the constraint is now a legal one, not a physical one.
And you cannot pool resources to become a signatory on a legal contract.
Which brings us right back to our spine. A license requires somebody to sign it, And a decentralized network has no one to hand the pin to.
Huh. The physical constraint got routed around easily, but a simple legal document stops the entire network cold.
To understand why a legal constraint stops a network that easily routed around a physical one, we must look at the literal foundation of the words we are using.
Yeah. The actual words really matter here. Wait, why is it called that? Where do these words come from?
Let's start with the word license. It comes from the Latin licentia, licentiu. That root simply means permission.
So a license literally just means permission. Someone who legally has the standing to say no to you has instead said yes to you in writing.
Right. They said yes to you as a named individual or a specific company. Now let's look at the word permissionless.
It is obviously built from the other half of that exact same concept.
It combines the Latin per, meaning through, and mitter, M-I-T-Terre, meaning to send or let through.
Okay, so a permission is essentially a person standing at a closed door, checking your credentials and letting you walk through it.
Right. A permissionless network has no door. And more importantly, it has nobody standing at it.
Yeah, that absence of a door is not a bug. It's the entire design of the decentralized network.
It is exactly what allows an anonymous operator in Lagos or Lisbon to plug a machine into a network at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, they just plug in and start serving requests. There's no application, no background check, no approval process at all.
And they do it without a name that anyone ever verifies. So what happens when these two foundational concepts collide?
Wait, if one requires a name and the other explicitly hides it, they just crash into each other.
A permissionless network cannot be granted a license for the exact same reason it cannot be refused one.
Because there's literally nobody standing at the door to be handed the paper.
Right. There is no entity to receive the yes or the no. And this collision at the door is not just happening with one lab in Hangzhou.
Yeah. If you look closely, this feels like the new architecture of the entire AI industry.
We have been watching this shape form for a while now. Naming the precedents out loud makes it clear that this is a definitive direction.
Right, because Meta's Llama has had a strict user limit since 2023. The free grant just gets revoked for any company serving more than 700 million users.
Moonshot AI does this too. Their Kimi K3 model demands a commercial agreement the moment your business passes $20 million in revenue.
And that commercial agreement, it reportedly runs to a revenue share as high as 30%.
The pattern is completely stable across all of these examples. They are moving the bottleneck from the hardware to the legal department.
It feels a lot like a speed limit. You can drive your car as fast as you want, and nobody cares until the cops actually pull you over.
Well, not quite a speed limit. Think of it more like a toll booth.
Wait, why is a toll booth a better way to picture this?
Because a toll booth is positioned exactly where a toll is collectible. A speed limit applies to everyone, but a toll booth is structural.
Oh, I see that. It intentionally lets the hobbyists, the academics, and the small startups just pass right underneath the barrier.
Right. It only catches the massive enterprise entities. It catches the companies with legal departments, corporate addresses, and audited books.
Which is honestly a genuinely reasonable way to stop massive cloud providers from just reselling a $100 million model for free.
It is entirely reasonable for the labs to do this, but this structure has a very specific blind spot.
Okay, let's unpack that blind spot. Who actually is the licensee on a decentralized inference network?
That is exactly the problem. The revenue threshold in these licenses is written against a specific singular entity.
Right. It usually targets you and your affiliates, calculating your total aggregated revenue over 12 months.
But a decentralized network is just a few hundred independent operators. They each run a tiny slice of the model.
And they just get paid in crypto tokens by an automatic, faceless ledger.
Right. There is no central entity. No single participant running a node in Lisbon is anywhere near making $50 million a year.
And there is no parent company to aggregate all their separate revenue into either.
So there is no signatory. There is no corporate address to send a cease and desist letter to.
Huh. And there are definitely no audited books to look at, even if you could find a person to audit.
The honest reading here is not that decentralized networks found some clever, bulletproof legal exemption.
Right. They didn't hack the law. They're just existing outside the mechanism entirely. The toll booth doesn't even register them.
But being outside the mechanism is actually a much less comfortable place than it sounds for these networks.
Wait, why? If the toll booth cannot see them, why do they care?
Because unenforceable is not the same thing as permitted. And these networks desperately want to sell their inference to enterprise customers.
Yeah, they want the big contracts. But an enterprise customer has a lawyer, and that lawyer will ask which license covers their usage.
And the decentralized network will just have to shrug. They will not have an answer to give them.
Because nobody signed the license.
Mhm.
So when a lawyer gets a shrug instead of a signed piece of paper, they just walk away from the deal entirely.
Exactly. So the toll booth doesn't actually stop the network's traffic. It just stops that traffic from being sold to anyone who reads contracts.
Huh. Which means this legal constraint lands in a very strange place. It barely touches the individual people running the actual machines.
Right. But it completely crushes the one thing this entire side of the field has been trying to build for years.
They want to be legitimate suppliers to customers who care about paperwork, and they structurally cannot be.
A license is a promise between two named parties. If you cannot produce the paper, you cannot close the enterprise deal.
So if the top tier of models is locking down behind all this required paperwork, what does that mean for the other models coming out right now?
We have to look at the counter pressure in the market, because not everyone is building toll booths.
Yeah. On August 11, literally just one day before that massive Hangzhou release, NVIDIA published Nimmertron 3.5 Lightning.
And they didn't just release the weights, they released the training data sets and the methodology too.
Which is a much stricter and honestly much rarer level of openness. You can actually see how the sausage was made.
Right. Meta also shipped another unencumbered model of its own the week before.
So the supply of genuinely unencumbered, highly capable models is actually growing right now at the exact same time.
Both realities are happening at once. But we also need a reality check on this week's specific story.
Yeah, it is important to state the practical limits of this out loud for anyone panicking.
The actual revenue share rate for the Hangzhou model hasn't even been published yet. They are reportedly still negotiating it behind closed doors.
And the license text itself has mostly been pieced together through secondary reporting. We haven't even seen the full document.
Right. Furthermore, $50 million is a massively high bar. There is no decentralized inference network on Earth currently making that much.
Exactly. Nobody is getting a bill today. Nobody listening to this is going to get a bill this year.
The story is not about a bill coming due today. It is about the direction a ratchet turns.
Wait, explain a ratchet.
When the very best models require a signature to operate legally at scale, a network that cannot physically sign a document loses its access to the enterprise market.
Yeah. We just keep coming back to the exact same problem. A permissionless network has nobody standing there to hand the paper to.
For most of the past 2 years, the main argument for decentralized inference was simply about cost and control.
Right. The pitch was always you get the exact same open model, served cheaper, by people that no single government can just switch off.
But that entire argument rested on a massive assumption. It assumed the best models would just keep arriving completely unencumbered forever.
Because historically they always had. But now, the best open models increasingly arrive with a revenue line drawn right through the middle of them.
When that happens, permissionlessness stops being purely an advantage. It starts also being a strict disqualification for buyers who need paperwork.
A network with nobody to sign a contract is a network that can never produce the one piece of paper an enterprise buyer asks for first.
Which leaves the entire decentralized field with a massive open question to answer going forward.
Does this make a permissionless network a haven or a ghetto?
That is the core question. Either it becomes the haven where these encumbered models get served anyway, quietly to people who don't ask any legal questions.
Or it becomes a ghetto, structurally unable to ever compete for the high-paying enterprise customers that actually sustain a business.
The technical mechanism itself doesn't decide which one of those it becomes. The code doesn't care.
Right. Who actually buys decentralized inference over the next 12 months will decide that reality.
The first decentralized network that actually manages to publish a formal license policy will be making a huge admission.
Yeah. They will be the very first to admit that a legal layer exists above the machines they spent 3 years building.
This is plain Strata, decentralized AI, layer by layer.